understanding, this movie is based on a novel, but that you did some significant changes in the adaptation process. What was your approach to, taking the book to screen?
It was sort of like a kind of ill-advised, time-wasting approach in a way, and that like I really loved the book when I read it, but I knew that there was like significant aspects about it which I didn't like. I remember finding it a bit too harsh, and my initial solution to that was like drastically changing the setting. So I moved the story. The story was set in the 70s amongst a group of gay bikers, and I moved it to ancient Rome. And that was the first draft of the script, and then the second draft of the script was in a cruise ship, and then
the ancient Rome of the modern times.
Yeah, exactly. The kind of floating Colosseum version, and then my producers thankfully said, "Get a grip and look at the book which you like so much and which we have paid the rights for," and I then did, but I knew that I didn't want to tell the story in the 70s because I thought that Ray's anonymity in the 70s was much less of a kind of question for me, because it seemed so likely that someone would be discreet due to kind of like socio-political pressures against gay men in the times, like, the illegality of it for one thing, and I wanted it to be open to the audience the question of why Ray is so withheld about his personal history, and I wanted to open the door to the possibility that that was a decision born of like erotic control rather than any personal baggage necessarily. It could be personal baggage, but I didn't want it to be obviously that, so I updated the time frame, and with that then came a lot of other changes. So for instance, the parents in the book are eventually the mum finds out he's gay when they're making Christmas dinner, and she sort of just is silent and says like the Brussels sprouts are ready or something. They kind of sweep the sexuality under the carpet, and I wanted the parents to be like loudly supportive at the beginning of the film. Kind of, yeah, the mum is kind of like my mum, and my mum, when I came out, once she got to grips with that, she then would like, whenever I went home, she'd cut out an attractive man she'd find in a magazine, and it would be ridiculous. She'd cut out any gay guy she could find, she'd cut out and leave on my bed, and then say, "You should date this guy." And so she was sort of the inspiration for Peggy, and I liked the idea that demonstratively supportive parents would then withdraw their support based on their son's sexual desire not meeting their idea of what like a happy gay life looks like. And again, I think I didn't want the parents' actions, specifically the mum's actions in the films, where she essentially tells Ray that he's a weirdo. I didn't want them to seem like clearly bigoted, but I did want there to be a question for the audience where they go, actually, does Ray have a point, because Colin is electing to live like this, and Peggy is kind of mapping her own desires of what a good romantic life looks like onto her son. So I thought it was like interesting to reverse the normal trajectory. I think in queer films with parents is that you go from unacceptance to acceptance, and I thought that reversing that arc was kind of an interesting take on the trope.
Yeah, they're enthusiastic that he's met someone, and then the more they get to know that circumstance, they're like, oh, but is this the right situation? I think that's a real nuance, and I think that one of the defining aspects of your film that I responded to so much when I saw it in Cannes was that nuance. I think that there is a deceptively difficult balance that you're striking tonally. I think a lesser filmmaker could easily turn this into some sort of leering cautionary tale, some sort of really over-the-top comedy. How conscious did you didn't do that though, how conscious did you have to be? Oh, hello. Here he is. Welcome.
Sorry guys, sorry. I had 2 doctors and an IV in my arm 20 minutes ago. in my hotel room. I got food poisoning. Did you tell them? Or?
I know, I just left it up.
All right.
I was trying to be discreet, but okay.
It's not contagious. It was something I ate, so it's not a bug. But I guess it is a bug. But yeah, I was in. Let's talk about food poisoning. We were at the Zurich Film Festival and had a little breakfast yesterday morning. And then when I got on the plane, I was like, "Ooh, this is not great." And then I spent 8 hours on the plane, on the bathroom floor of the plane, just dry heaving. And yeah, so I'm a little fragile. And the doctors were like, "You're not leaving the room." Like ripped the IV out of my arm. I'm like, "You'll put me in a coffin before I miss a SAG Q A." I'm not pandering at all.
Pander away.
Thanks for coming. Thanks.
Tis the season. Well, I want to just finish what I was asking you because it does kind of go into something I want to ask you, Alex. But about the tone of the film, like the balance you strike between it's funny, it's sad, it's sweet. How conscious of that did you have to be while writing and then directing? And then maybe I would ask you, Alex, in the performance.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. In the writing, often it was the question which the people who were like financing the movie or developing it would have would be like, how is the tone going to sit? Because it feels like there's clashing tones, but that was something I really liked from the book, was that it would like move one sentence, it would seem sincere, and then the next sentence it would seem like a parody, and like those tones actually like came together in a very interesting way. It wasn't a harmony, the tones kind of bash heads with each other, but it created, I still felt like emotional weight from the story in spite of the parodic elements. And I think that it was all actually what we kind of tried to do when we were filming was just play with the particular of the humor, like play with the levels in which it was being pitched. So, you know, test out how broad you could go, but then bring things back so that I knew that in the edit I was going to need to be able to pull back on the humor if it was a kind of section of the film which requires more sincerity. So yeah, we just sort of got different options.
Yeah, I mean, in that same vein, Alexander, like Ray seems to contain multitudes. He's pretty stoic at times, but there's a lot going on underneath the surface, which is a testament to your performance, certainly. How did you sort of internally think about all of his complexity and how to communicate that, outwardly?
Well, I thought it was quite interesting reading it, how much of an enigma Ray was, and how Harry maintained that throughout the script was something I really enjoyed. I was a little not worried, but I remember reading it the first time thinking, oh, I hope there won't be a point where you have a big like climactic moment, like a reveal of, oh, he's got a wife and kids, or like something like that for like a dramatic effect, to have like a clash between him and Colin. And I was so relieved that didn't happen, that he's kind of this wall is up throughout the film. And then it was all about trying to find, you obviously don't want to play the same note throughout the movie just because he's an enigma or he's like closed off. So it was about finding these brief moments where you almost sense a vulnerability, and that's quite fun when there's so few of them and they're so like tiny that those become quite big to play around with. So that was something I quite enjoyed.
Yeah, you find yourself really leaning in close because you're like, oh, there was a slight different change in Ray's tone there or reaction there, and it's really subtly great stuff. Did you have time, the two of you with Harry, before you started shooting to like rehearse or talk things through? How did that the kind of pre-production process work?
Not really. I came in straight from another job, so came in just a week before, and we had obviously had conversations, but Harry, Melling, and I hadn't, and we hadn't met. I thought he was a terrific actor, so I was very excited to work with him, but we actually met on the Friday. We were supposed to start shooting on Monday, where you guys were already shooting
We've done a week. Yeah.
You done a week of the family stuff. So I guess it was Saturday, 2 days before shooting, when we got together to rehearse the wrestling scene. So we literally shook hands, said nice to meet you.
That's how plenty of men meet in the real world.
But it's a great way to get to know each other.
You know, there are scenes in this film that are, you know, that's a physically, you know, like even the choreography of that is pretty complex. But there's also, you know, matters of intimacy, especially, you know, in recent years we have talked, you know, intimacy coordinators and all that. So, Harry, what was your approach to how those scenes were going to be staged and who was going to be on set? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I had an intimacy coordinator called Robbie who I had worked with on a TV show about 2 years prior, and I told him about the film then. And like 6 months before we started shooting, we sat down and like worked out not what the process was going to be, but like what I wanted from the sex scene. So I wanted them to feel unvarnished and to have a kind of clumsiness and a reality to them. And the task then, I think, it became about like how to achieve that without feeling like we were being deliberately provocative or you know, just putting stuff on the screen for the sake of saying like here's a penis. And then I actually can't remember when you guys met, Robbie, but I know that the approach to the sex scenes was getting me, Robbie, and the actors together, and they were kind of written in a lot of detail on the page. So much detail that when we were sending out the script, the actors, I remember my producers being like, you need to cut out some of the lines because they're going to put people off. There was like a line where I'd written in the alleyway scene, I'd written like, he is kind of coarse, but he like fucks him in the back of the throat like he's taking a swab. I remember writing that. And,
I remember reading that.
and you know, it sounds like you're kind of doing it to show off, but I actually was doing it to try and like establish what the feeling of that scene should be. It should feel, there should be like a brutality there, and that's part of the appeal of it, the appeal of the domination. And so the kind of, I didn't ever feel that the intimacy coordination was like a block. I know that's a conversation which people have, but I just felt like Robbie, together with these guys, brought like so many details to the scenes in terms of how to achieve it and how to achieve the honesty, whether that's like the choice of lube or the clumsiness of moving sex position or whatever. But you know, you probably spent more time with Robbie than I did.
No, I just second what you just said. I thought Rob was fantastic, and it was for myself, not so much about feeling comfortable with the two Harrys. It was more about coming up with creative ways of figuring out how to block those scenes and how to get the most out of them, because they are quite interesting. Because there's a narrative in the sex scenes. They're not just a lot happens in those scenes between the characters and Colin's kind of development. So I thought Robbie was instrumental in how to best portray that.
Do you feel like a lot is happening for Ray in his development too? Because you do get some sense, oh, he's been through this routine before, but you also get this film exists because something's maybe different about this time. Was that in your head at all when you were kind of?
Yeah, I wanted it to mean something, and again, I wanted Ray to have. It's not as a dramatic an arc as for Colin, but maybe it is. I don't know. But I definitely wanted changes, and I wanted it to be have an impact on Ray as well.
I think, yeah, and also like part of the just like the nature of a strict BDSM relationship played over months as opposed to days is that like no one can fully live in a role 24/7. So like part of the arc with Ray was beginning to just see slippages in the performance of the role,
Yeah.
and that was there's interest in all those slippages.
You know, as high stakes maybe on camera and off camera as some of those more intimate scenes or those sexually intimate scenes are, I think from my perspective as a viewer, the scene in the end in the park where this dynamic, this wealth of something passes between them, sad and happy and melancholy. What was incumbent upon both of you to get right about filming that scene? I mean, it's you know, not to paint with too broad a brush, but it feels like the defining scene of the film to me anyway, as an audience member.
I think for my part, I wanted the whole of that day off is kind of a sequence, as far as I understood it, and
The Richard Curtis montage.
yeah, I wanted the beginning of that day off when they're, you know, sitting on the bench in the high street, for that to feel like the kind of slight fantasy of this whole romance has fallen away, and so we like shot it on hidden cameras and long lenses, and I wanted it to feel more documentary style. You know, the idea being that without the role play initially, the day feels like aimless and boring and very unsexy, and then once Ray like coaxes Colin into singing and like coaxes him into a romantic mode where he's starting to take control, I wanted to lead into those Richard Curtis romantic tropes, and for like fantasy to return, but in a different way to where the kind of fantastical elements of the role play, the relationship, I wanted it to be like syrupy and the kind of syrup of typical movie romance, where you kind of buy into it and you get a warm feeling from it, but you don't really believe in the reality of it. And that culminates in the kiss, you know, when that, I mean, I remember the sun wouldn't come out, but like the kiss is like, you know, we built up to this panoramic view, and you track them along and they kiss, and they're sort of kissing in like a like, for Bromley, which you guys probably don't know what that is, but that location is like hilariously un-Bromley in terms of how like picturesque it is, and then the kiss is the moment where, well, you know, for Colin, the day gets its most kind of fantastical completion, and then for Ray, it kind of the fantasy falls away again. That's what I was trying to build towards at that moment.
And Alexander, what was it like to kind of shoot in that style that Harry just described, where you're almost, you know, long lenses and all that, you're being immersed in it? Did it feel organic in some way, or were you sort of ever conscious of the arc of what you were trying to get toward?
No, I was really enjoying that sequence because it was quite uncharacteristic. It's a different side of Ray. He's kind of putting on a performance, and that was fun. And then it, you know, you're always filled with adrenaline when you get to shoot with that kind of guerrilla style, when you're running around High Street Bromley with, they weren't extras, it was like, you know, a real shopping Friday, people are out shopping, so we were like running around, and there were a lot of, yeah, crazy people coming up to camera, and, you know, it was like a lot happened, so it was like an exciting day. And then, yeah, for the end bit, I wanted it to be open to interpretation, kind of why Ray orchestrated this day. And it's been quite interesting hearing with, I haven't done that many, but a couple of Q&As, you know, and hearing how people interpret that. It's been interesting how some people see it as like Ray getting a glimpse of what this relationship could be, and that scares him. Some people are like, oh, this is kind of almost sadistic that he puts Colin through this to then just like. Some people feel it's almost an act of generosity, like Ray, before this date begins, knows that they're not compatible, they want different things. And this is a way to show Colin, who's very inexperienced, like this is the type of relationship you want. At least occasionally, once a week maybe, or once a month. But I'm not a guy to give you that.
Yeah, I think in some ways it could be all of those things, you know, at
Yeah,
once.
yeah.
We have to wrap up, but I just wanted to say that I'm having a very Skarsgård week in that earlier this week I had brunch with an actor called Stellan Skarsgård, and but we were talking about when he saw your film for the first time, and I was saying, well, you know, I've been really evangelical about Pillion. I've been telling friends and coworkers that they have to see it. But I was like, but I don't know about my parents. I don't know my dad. He's in his 90s. And then your father looked, he said, well, or maybe he'll come out to you for the first time. So before we go, I'm curious how both of you kind of feel like, have you already had experiences where you're showing this film to people who it's not, quote, made for, and what an interesting reaction has been? Has that been a part of the experience already?
Yeah, my dad came out after watching it.
Oh, congrats.
He did not, I should say, he did not.
We have the same reaction.
My parents have not seen it. Funny reactions, different reactions. I mean, actually, it's only played at four, this is the 4th film festival, so I haven't really, I don't think that, usually people going to watch it at film festivals kind of know what they're in for a little bit. We're going to London in a couple of weeks, and like all of my family are coming, some of whom it's very much not that kind of film. So like, but I'm willing to be surprised. Maybe that's me being judgmental.
Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting experience. Aunts and uncles and.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a testament to the film that once people have seen it, I think they feel exactly what you both have described today. And so thank you for your words today, and thank you for the film, and thank you all for being here.
Thanks for coming.